Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode or today's weekly LinkedIn Live. Great to have you guys on board and joining us today. And this is a program that we hold weekly. Again, I said it last week and starting to do better to hold our weekly LinkedIn Live. So I do thank everybody for joining. We hold it every Tuesday, 12 noon at Eastern Time. We discuss all things change leadership, leading change in today's disruptive business environment, how leading change is changing. We meet and discuss with various change leaders in various fields and industries. And, and not just that, even though I'm based in Canada, today our guest is joining us from the US. So that's really exciting. And I'm joining you from Toronto, Canada. And do let me know as you join us, where are you joining us from? So if you're watching live, tell us where you're joining us from. Introduce yourself. We want to get to know you. And if you're watching the rebroadcast, also let us know where you're joining us from. We always love to know where folks are joining us from. And you can always share your comments as we go along. Share your comments, share your questions, add to the discussion. We want to hear from you. So today I have Jeremy Schmidt, who is joining us from the US. I mentioned Minnesota, right?
Correct.
What's the weather like in Minnesota?
Cold, probably very similar to what it's like in Canada. I'm not far.
Oh,
I'm not far from Canada. So
oh Lord, you don't even want to know what the weather has been like. It's been crazy over the last few weeks. I think things are just easing off a little bit for us right now. But great to have you, Jeremy. And you're a member of our community. You've attended our conferences, you've attended our Change Leadership Accelerator program, and just chatting with you. I see and know your passion for change leadership. So really great to have you join us. Your manager for organizational change management with RBC, another place I have some passion for, having worked with RBC in my past. So introduce us to your what it is that you do and a little bit about your change journey as well.
yes, and before I get to that, let me just make a comment about being from the U.S. Is that when I travel to southern states in the U.S., people often ask me, "Oh, are you from Canada?" because of my accent. Here, kind of in the north part of the U.S., especially as we get closer to the border, I think we have a little bit more of a Canadian accent, I guess. So
You know what? If somebody was to ask me what's a Canadian accent, I wouldn't even know.
either do I, but apparently I have one. So there
Okay.
we go.
So I'm going to
um,
pay attention to your accents today.
all right, yeah. So again, um, Jeremy Schmidt. I'm the manager of the organizational change management team here at the Royal Bank of Canada, their U.S. Wealth Management division.
Mhm.
I've been with the organization for coming up on 2 years now. So I actually joined RBC just a few weeks prior to the pandemic really
Wow.
kicking in and them sending everyone to work from home.
Mm.
So I only worked in our office for 3 weeks,
So
and
at least you know what the office looks like.
I know what it looks like. And we're actually only 2 weeks away now from moving our corporate headquarters a few blocks down the street,
Okay.
which is by the way, one of my largest change projects that I'm engaged in right now,
Oh,
which is
nice.
a huge change. I mean, almost 2,000 people were moving from, building to building. But yeah, I've been in the financial services industry for about 20 years now.
Mhm.
Started off as an advisor, then kind of moved into a home office, corporate office role, working with advisors, doing training and development, practice management, a lot of different things until I started working on a very large project about 5 to 6 years ago where we were going to require all of our sales force to make some drastic changes in how they do
Mm.
business. And it was at that point that I went through my first change management certification training. And it was like a light bulb that went off for me. I realized I had never really had any kind of formal introduction to change management prior to then. And going through that certification course, I had realized that what I had been doing for years up until that point was helping manage change.
Yeah,
And,
I
and,
love
and,
that. Yeah, there's
and
transferable
right,
skills, right?
exactly. Now I just had words to go with what it was that I had been doing for so long.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I someone was sharing with me the other day how, they were actually in this interview and speaking with the person interviewing them, and they were saying all giving all the right answers, but because they weren't using the right change management terminologies. So that's really interesting, change management lingo and
Mhm.
terminologies. So I like that even before you moved formally into change management, you mentioned you were already leading change, which is something that we love to highlight here, that change, being able to lead change is often agnostic of your role. Change managers have to lead change, project managers, leaders, managers, with all of the titles need to lead change. But whether you are in that formal role or title, what we like to say is that change leadership applies to everybody. So, in your own words, how would you differentiate between change leadership and change management?
Yeah, so and I think a common definition of change management kind of that a lot of people probably heard is kind of a structured process, set of tools, and helping people kind of adapt their behaviors, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely in alignment with that definition. I think change leadership is more of a mindset and it's how you show up every day. And I will
Mm,
say, and I'll probably mention this a few times throughout our interview here today, that actually going through the Change Leadership Accelerator course, I don't know that I would say that there was a lot of new things that I had heard, but I think
mhm,
what it really did and what I really appreciated is it really brought, to my consciousness, on a day by day basis that, I have influence and I
mm,
influence people either for the positive or the negative, with my actions every day. And I need to be more conscious of the way that I'm acting and the way that I'm, my behaviors and the way I'm presenting myself because people notice. I
mm,
mean, and regardless of title, now I do happen to have now a management title, which brings with it maybe a little bit more influence,
mhm,
but it's something that I talk about with my team all the time is that we have to be careful of the things that we say and how we act because people notice and you can have influence and it can be positive or it can be negative. So I really think of change leadership, it's just really it's our cumulative actions and our words and our mindset.
mm,
We have to be conscious of the things that we're saying and the things that we're doing because we influence other people and we can influence people, to resist change if
mm,
we're resisting change. So
mm.
we have to be conscious of that. And going through like I said, the accelerator course really helped me be more conscious of my own action and my own words.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And we've had very experienced people like you who have the ProSci, certification that still end up doing the Change Leadership Accelerator program because, like I say to people, it's not one or the other. It's like a complement to what it does. And one of the things that we can, I mean, I've been a change manager, I'm still a change manager, and it's easy to sometimes focus on the management and the structure of things and your deliverables and forget about the leadership aspect, which is what really helps influence and drive the change and make the change successful, and that interaction that we have with people. So yes, change management is great, and change leadership is great. I've had people say, "Oh, I've heard, I'm sure you've heard the talk about let's change the terminology. It's no longer change management." And I'm like, they both have their places, really, in everything that it is that we do. So it's not one or the other. They're just really both important for certain different purposes, And like I say, as a change manager, we do change management, but we also have to apply change leadership. And then as a non change manager, you have to apply change leadership, especially in today's, disruptive business environment. And why would you say, when we think about change leaders, who in your definition is a change leader, and why do organizations need folks to be change leaders, or do they?
Yes. So let me address the first question on who's a change leader. As you stated already, anyone, regardless of title or position, can be a change leader.
Mm,
And like I had mentioned as well, it's just you need to keep that in the forefront of your mind, that you influence people one way or another,
mm-hmm,
right? So if you're influencing people to adapt, be flexible, to continually learn and continually improve, then you are being a change leader. You're helping other people adapt
mm,
to the situation that they're in, whether it be, you know, in their work or in their personal lives.
mm,
It applies to all of life, really.
mm.
Um, so, so anyone can be a change leader, certainly. And on the flip side of that coin, anyone can be they can be a change resistor. I mean, I kind of think of it as you're one or the other. You're either setting a good example and you're influencing people, or you're setting the wrong example and you're influencing people in the wrong way. So you need to think about that, right? Like, be conscious of your words and your actions, and the influence that you're having on people. And then I think you had asked about, why do organizations need change leaders?
Yeah, why do, I mean, because some organizations may say, we don't really need a change leader. We have our top management team. They should be the ones leading and driving change.
Right.
And when we think about even the future of work, we look at all the skills that are becoming more important. So what shift, perhaps I can slant the question a little bit, is what shift organizations need to start to make to embrace change leadership as a skill within their organization or competencies? Why do they need to even do it?
Yeah, there are a couple of different responses that I would have to that. One is, with the rapid pace of change just in the world in general, people are consuming products and services in different ways. They're
Mm,
looking for those products and services in different ways. And so businesses then need to adapt to consumer behavior
mm,
in order. And sometimes when you're in a large organization like RBC, I mean, we have tens of thousands of employees across the globe. In order for us to be able to adapt an organization of that size, we need everybody on board with what it is that we need to be doing differently. We need
mm.
everybody to be thinking about, continuing to develop myself, learn about the new things that are happening in the organization. Um, and a lot of these changes are because of this, I would say, this technological revolution that humanity is going through right now. And I mean, if people are familiar with um, just basically the exponential growth
Yeah,
in technological change
yeah,
right now, and what that's doing to, again, the way people consume products and services, businesses are having a hard time, keeping up with that change. So it's really important to have people within those organizations that are learning and adapting, how those businesses operate.
yeah. That's interesting. And which what you say is interesting because it even ties into a question which we just got. And we usually get questions during the session. And if you're watching the read broadcast, just drop a question. We'll always come back and answer it. So Adedayo, welcome. And he says, could you please talk about change in hierarchical institutions, healthcare in this instance, especially when there's not a strong financial incentive for accountability in driving value and customer services? So one of the things that I know is that is driving, the need for more change leadership is that even in hierarchical institutions, then many organizations are changing that. Things are becoming flatter, and you've had to lead an organization through agile yourself, Jeremy, in the past. And one of the struggles that you find with hierarchical organizations and agile as something which is, a mindset and not just tools, is that we need to move fast. We need to respond to change. So how do you even reconcile that kind of mindset with an organization which is very hierarchical? So you have RBC. RBC is a huge organization. There are huge structures in place. So how do you, to answer this question, how do you, talk about driving change in such huge organizations for you, even using examples of where you've worked in the past and even where you are now?
You know, that's a great question. And I think that regardless of who you are in an organization, never underestimate the influence that you as an individual can make, regardless of whether you're an individual contributor in the organization or you're in some level of leadership. Even people that are individual contributor type positions that may feel like they don't have authority, you definitely can have influence.
Mm,
And I see a lot of people that never really try to exercise that influence, right? They show up, they go, through the regular steps of my job. I'm trying to please my boss, for instance. And then, I'm clocking out at the end of the day. But I would very much encourage people, regardless of role or position within an organization, to think about how, you influence others in the organization, what more you could do. I mean, even just going and having a conversation
mm,
with another superior or your boss or another leader in the organization, and just even broach the conversation about you know change and change management and change leadership helps get other people thinking about these sorts of things,
yes.
right? And anybody can have influence. And as it relates to, so for those that have gone through like ProSci certification, they talk a lot about sponsorship
Mm,
and about how sponsorship is the number one contributing factor to, successfully leading change. I completely agree with that statement, but one of the things that I would maybe add to that is sponsorship sometimes can be thought of as the person that is the decision maker that holds the purse strings, so to
yeah.
speak. I think that sponsorship has two different aspects to it. There's the authority piece to it, right? And that often does come with title or position. But then there's the influence piece, and that has nothing to do with title or position.
Mm,
So people have to realize that you may not have authority all the time, but you do have influence if you exercise it. So you need to be aware of that,
mm,
right? And that's, I think, one of the things that your course really kind of brought to the surface with me is that we need to think about, not just using authority to drive change, but its influence. And as we've talked
yeah.
about here, change leadership is really about influencing other people.
Yeah, I like what you say. And to add to that, just even looking at the question is when we think about what influences people, what motivates people to change, we often think, okay, financial incentive, what's in it for them, or even to what you say, if somebody with the title, an authority says something that maybe they'll do it. But just let's look at the whole, I'm putting it in quote, great resignation, because we're trying to move away from that word great resignation, is that the stakeholders and audience are beginning to have more autonomy in terms of what they want and what's driving them. And to drive change goes beyond just trying to say, you know, um, you know, bring it in or build it and they will come, or tell them to do it and they will do it. That's where really we talk about influence, which you've really said a lot on, but it's really about finding out what's in it for them, what's important to your audience and stakeholder, and not making assumptions. Somebody was asking me the other day in our community and was saying, oh, how do I approach this change situation? How do I work with the stakeholders? And not how do I work with the stakeholders, how do I lead this change? And I nearly made an assumption that, of course, you're engaging your stakeholders in terms of identifying the benefits of the change, right? And but I said, I'll just mention, I said, oh, and I know engaging your stakeholders to identify the benefit, and they say, oh no, I hadn't thought about that, that's a good one, I'll add it. So, when you're talking with your stakeholders or working with your stakeholders, or let me take it back a little bit. When you're leading and driving change, stakeholder engagement, not communication, not sending a message to them. Stakeholder engagement is very important in influencing and driving the change, because when you engage with your stakeholders, you understand what their needs are. You understand what's in it for them. You understand what motivates them. You understand what's working for them. What will help them adopt the change. So to add to your answer for Adedayo, is when there's no strong financial incentive or for accountability, it's really finding out about what's in it for them, what's their motivator, what's important for them, and then that helps them be more open to the change. So thank you for that great question, Adedayo. Appreciate that. you know and so when we think about the future of work now, and this is something that we were just saying before we kicked off this discussion, it's changing. There's talk about relearning, unlearning, and learning. There's a talk about reskilling and upskilling. How are you preparing yourself and your team for the future of work?
Yeah, and we actually, Yvonne and I talked about this a little bit before coming on, is one of the things that our team does very, very intentionally.
Mm,
And actually RBC as an organization does this very intentionally, is it encourages people to continually learn. And our team actually sets aside time on a regular basis to actually do what we call team learning. I
mm,
mean, we will schedule time in our calendars for all of us to get together. Now we're doing it, via video conference instead of in person. But it's just an opportunity. And what we do is we assign different team members to different dates where they get to pick, what is it that I want to come back and teach the rest of the team.
mm,
Or even sometimes it's just rehashing a really great article or a blog post that maybe we read and kind of talking about it together. So that's one of the things that we do, is we really encourage people to take time out of their day to focus on professional development, personal development, learning new things, because oftentimes we can just get caught up in, I think you mentioned, just cranking out the work, right? Like my boss is expecting something from me and I'm trying to get it to them on time. But if we never actually carve off time to where we can just work on developing ourselves, then we're not going to be able to adapt to anything new, right? I
mm.
mean, it's all about learning and adapting. And
Yes.
the organization that I'm a part of, RBC, one of their core values is always learning, always adapting.
Yes,
It's
and yeah, and that's one skill for the future of work, which is learning and adapting, to change. The technical skills for sure, but that learning, adaptability, reskilling, all of those are really key things, because what worked yesterday is not going to work today. So if we want to be at the forefront of being able to lead and drive change, we need to be able to respond to the changes within our environment. And that just takes continuous learning and relearning and reskilling, which is something that you obviously did, leading by example. You joined our Change Leadership Accelerator program. And like you mentioned, you already had the PROSA, you already have done something like that. So what was it that made you join? Why did you choose to go or come on this program?
Yeah, a couple of things. The first one is that I do have a leader within RBC organization, someone that's been kind of a mentor of mine, and someone that went through this course last summer, I think, into the fall, and she
Mm.
highly recommended it to me.
Mm.
And because of, you know, she influenced me, I guess. And I'm always looking for kind of like the next development opportunity. So, I since we've been in the pandemic, my learning has kind of all been, on certain tracks. And so I was looking for something different,
Mm.
right? Like I don't want to just read another article or another book, right? I wanted to engage in some sort of course, and that's, I mean, I know we'll probably get to talking about the Change Leadership Accelerator a little bit more, but just the varied way in that you deliver the content with the videos and the workbooks and the chats, about what it is that we learn, so we can reinforce things. So it was really partially, someone in my organization that recommended it to me,
Mm-hmm.
and the opportunity to find something, that was a little bit different,
Mm,
to learn something that was a little bit different and in a different way than I've been consuming things now over the last 2 years. That
mm,
really kind of drew me into the Change Leadership course.
thanks for that. And we have one more question. And before we go to that question, just to wrap up and finish up on the Change Leadership Accelerator program, thank you for highlighting that it is different. And one of the things that we do to make it different is that we try to make it practical and tangible. So what was that for you? Did you experience it in that way? And look at me putting it out there, because that's one of the key things we say about that program. You probably will come and say, no, it wasn't practical. But one of the things we focus on is, okay, we've learned all the theories, you know, we have the certifications, we have the degrees, how can I use or get something or learn something that I can hit the ground running with, that as I'm even implementing a project, I can even use it real time to make that work for me. What was your experience in that sense, if at all?
Yes. Well, so maybe this will highlight how I thought it was very practical. One of the things that my team is looking to do is we're looking to basically raise change capabilities across our organization.
Hmm.
And that includes a lot of different things. But one of the things that we've decided to do in 2022 is to do a quarterly lunch and learn, where we invite different, project managers, people on our project teams, our communications partners, people that work in different, training aspects in the organization. And we invite them to a session where we talk about some concept. And I actually enjoyed the Change Leadership Accelerator and some of the concepts that you had talked about, that we're actually doing a lunch and learn in 3 weeks that I'm going to lead. So I'm going to teach back some of the things that Yvonne, I had learned through the course to others in our organization,
Oh,
which,
fantastic.
which by the way, is not only a great way to basically kind of raise the tide in all boats in the organization, to have
Hmm.
people understanding like what is change leadership. It's going to help me because, as you know, as a lot of people may know from like adult learning theory, there are a lot of different ways that we learn, right? We can see it, we can do it. Once we get to that point where we're able to actually teach it to someone else, then it
Mm,
really solidifies in our brain.
mm,
And
mm.
so part of the reason for me wanting to do a teach back of what I had learned is that I know I'm going to continually develop my own skills if I'm actually able to, teach it to someone else now. So thank you for passing it to me. Now I'm going to continue to pass it
I
on.
love that. I love that. One of the things that the change leadership is all about is change leadership advocacy. And that's a big thing, and that's how we started off, all about change leadership advocacy. And we started off with our conferences, and out of our conferences, people kept on saying to us, so what else, so what else, so what else? And that was why we developed the program as what else, the next step. So when we think about change leadership advocacy, the whole point of it is that we're spreading change done right, because we believe that when change is done right, it benefits the employees, organization, the communities at large, the economy. So for you to be taking that message back out there and teaching it to other people, oh my gosh, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished.
Well, hopefully I can do it justice the way that you've
I'm
done
sure
it
you will.
justice.
So we have
Um,
one last question. He says, could you talk about driving change in the remote work environment? Oh my gosh, that is so for you, Jeremy, because you started your whole role in this new organization
mhm.
thrown into remote working, 3 weeks into a pandemic lockdown, remote working. So how do you drive change in a remote working environment? How is that different from normal?
Yes, that's a fantastic question. And it is something that, we've struggled with quite a bit being
Mm,
remote, because a lot of, and I've mentioned this word influence a lot in this conversation, right? A lot of our influence that we have on people comes from the relationships that we build
mm,
and the trust that we build with people through those relationships. And it's much, much harder to develop those relationships when everything's virtual and we see people on a screen.
mm,
Oftentimes, the people, that I want to build a relationship with or get to know, I only see them in very, very formal meeting
mm,
settings, and where there's not a lot of time for chit chat. We can't go grab a cup of coffee or go to lunch and get to know each other. So, one of the things that I've been off and on, and I do this better than other times, is I try to set up ways for myself to continually develop relationships with people in different ways. So I will schedule virtual coffees with people.
I love that.
Sometimes there are different people around the organization that I know that I'm going to need to work with,
Mm.
but I want to get to know them a little bit. So I might just schedule 30 minutes to have a webinar and just say, hey, I just want to, it's an introduction meeting. Let's get
I
to know
like
each
that. You're
other a
being
little bit.
intentional about it. You're not waiting
Yes.
till you need them, because in the past you'd probably walk past them, stop, you hold your cup of coffee, and you're just chit-chatting with them and getting to know them in passing. But
Right.
now you're being intentional to develop those relationships before you even meet with them or before you even need them in the future.
Yes. So, and here's another one. And actually, this just happened this morning. There was an organizational announcement about someone that was taking over a new management role in the organization. I never let those opportunities go by without me reaching out to that person. Most of the time, I don't even know who they are, but I'll just send them a quick note saying, hey, congratulations.
Mm,
I'm looking forward to working with you at some time.
mm,
Again, it's all about, I mean, relationships are so important, and
yes.
having trust is so important. And you need to always be thinking about, how do I get, how do I get to know people better? The next time that if I'm ever in a project now where I need to work with that person,
Mm,
the first time I contact them, they're probably going to remember, oh, that's right. He reached out to me and congratulated me. And he was one of the 3 people that maybe did.
yes, because we assume everybody's doing that, but not everybody's doing it.
No, no, I don't
Mm-mm.
think many people do at all.
Yeah,
I
because guess
mean,
what? When you did that, he probably looked you up in the org chat, checked what it
exactly.
is that you were doing, checked you out for sure.
And so the next time I contact that person now, they're more likely to respond,
Mm,
right? Because they're going to be like, oh, okay, I know who that person is at least. And hopefully they have a positive impression because I did reach out and congratulate them. And I can't stress that enough. I can't stress enough to, both as a change manager or a change leader, at how important building relationships and trust with people
yes.
are.
Yes, trust and relationships is so, so, so big, because, and we can still build those things. So thank you for sharing how you can still build that trust and relationship with people by being more intentional about how you engage with them and how you reach out to them, and not waiting until the change is coming before you think about building that relationship. And sometimes the change has already come and you've never contacted somebody, but it's all how you are intentional about it. One thing I would add, Jeremy, which is interesting, I was training the other day, I was teaching about empathy. And someone said, oh, empathy is hard with remote working. I said, actually, empathy is easier with remote working. And they're like, how can that be? I said, because you're now seeing people in their own environment. So for us, empathy is very big when it comes to leading change, because that's a great way that you can build trust and relationships. But just looking at the screen now, having this meeting with you, I can see your background, I can see the certificates, I can see the awards, I can see the masthead, and those are things that you being in your environment, I can ask you questions about those things, and it creates a connection between us. You say, oh my gosh, I have something exactly like that. I was speaking with somebody for the first time. They came on and they had the exact picture frame and painting that I had. What did that do? We immediately built a rapport.
Mhm. Right.
And that rapport, being able to build that rapport, made it much easier for us to connect, relate, and talk about the business that we were talking about, because we just created was one of the first rules of building trust: common ground.
Mhm. Absolutely.
We just created common ground. So thank you so much, Jeremy. Oh my gosh, before this and even now, we've just been talking, and we could talk about change forever. I know I could talk about change forever. It just simply lights me up. So I'm so thankful for you joining us on this LinkedIn Live, which we do weekly, to talk about, change, what it means to be a change leader. Thank you for being gracious to be spotlighted. We love to spotlight people from whichever field, whichever organization, and whichever country it is, And so thank you everybody who joined us. Thank you to everybody who is watching the rebroadcast and during the program or the session. Jeremy mentioned quite a few times about the Change Leadership Accelerator. Our program is on at the moment. We're taking on new students. So if you're interested, just drop me a message and I'll be more than happy to share more information with you about the program. So on that note, thank you so much, Jeremy. Have a great rest of the day. What's the time zone? What's it there right now? I know it's 12 p.m. Eastern. Are we on the same
I,
Eastern time zone?
I think nope, I'm in the central time zone,
Oh,
so
Central.
it's almost lunchtime here right now.
Almost
But
lunchtime. So thank
yes, well,
you.
and thank you, Yvonne, for inviting me to speak here today, but also for continuing to build change leaders in the business world.
Thank you so
Very
much.
much needed.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye for now, everybody.